What if it's not about a building? What if it's not about stained glass or steeples? What if it's about just Jesus?
Wow, welcome back. I feel like this week in between is just too long.
It does. It feels like forever.
It does, and I don't know why. So last week we talked about the three Hebrew boys, and that was a great story. Cory, you did a great job of bringing that to life.
Okay, so I have to say,
y'all did a great job.
Stephen, when you started and you just rattled off those names, like you were able to just, I was blown away that you could just, I had no clue.
Well, luckily I handled the editing, so I was able to take out all my all my flaws.
You're not supposed to say that part.
But you knew those names immediately.
Oh, that's funny.
That was impressive.
I think it's funny that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were actually the names of the Chaldean customs that Nebuchadnezzar gave them once they came over into his kingdom. Their actual names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Oh, so they named them according to their culture.
Yes, and this is the thing. Every one of their names meant something that had to do with God from their Hebrew customs. But the Chaldean kingdom made their names mean something of gods that they worship.
Oh, wow.
Is it just me, or when you say Shadrach, do you think of like the light show locally? Isn't it called Shadrach's?
It is.
And that's probably why.
And that's what, when you said Shadrach, I was like, oh.
I knew the name somewhere. That's
why.
it.
That's why.
Yeah. So, Cory, on the same trend, man, what do you got for us this week?
Oh, well, I think it would be awesome to go ahead and lead into Daniel and the lion's den, because maybe or maybe not, people might not know that Daniel was with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
When you say he was with them, what do you mean?
Yeah.
They were all the same age and they were best friends.
Are you serious?
Yes.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they were more. There was more people that came with them from their customs of the Hebrews, and
So were they basically like stolen from?
yes, by a siege that was overtaken and brought on by King Nebuchadnezzar to get them out of their land to bring them to his, because they were the best looking, the smartest kids, and he wanted them for his kingdom. And he did that. He extracted all over to get the best of the best running in his kingdom.
So that's a touch of like Hitler, right?
Yeah, I know. It was like, gosh, history truly repeats itself. That is
Yeah.
crazy.
Like
He
just
was
pulling in all the
creating-
people that he wanted to see.
Yeah, he was
wanted everyone to
creating
look
his
the
own
same.
race.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and their actual Hebrew names, this is why he changed them, that Chaldean king. Their Hebrew names, which they received at their circumcision, or the customs of the Jewish customs, they all had something to do with God. Daniel was God's my judge. Hananiah was the grace of the Lord. Mishael was he that is the strong God. And Azariah means the Lord is a help.
So did they change Daniel's name?
Yes.
They made it Daniel, or Daniel was his original name?
They changed it to Belteshazzar.
Ugh,
Yeah.
that's kind of a downgrade.
Which is Bel or a long grade.
But, it's funny. When I named my kids, I really thought about when they were in kindergarten, like, okay, what's the easiest name for them to be able to spell?
100%.
And doesn't rhyme with something
Awful.
bad.
You have
Right.
to think about all those things.
You really do. And you go from Daniel to what'd you say?
Belteshazzar.
Belteshazzar.
Wow.
Or Belteshazzar.
We're just going to call him Belty.
So, yeah. Or, see, it was from a god named Bel. That's
Why didn't they
Kinda.
just call him?
because I guess that was the actual god's name. but it signifies the keeper of the hidden treasures of Bel. That's what his name represented.
So just to recap, his book in the Bible is called Daniel. They refer to him as Daniel in his book. Was that prior to the name change, or did they just say, you know what, no matter what, you're going to be called Daniel?
Well, when they brought him over, I think it was a little bit of both. The
Okay.
king actually changed his name, but for some reason in the translation, he's still called Daniel.
That's so weird because they kept the Hebrew boys,
I know. Well,
Shadrach.
Daniel earlier was promoted to a higher place in the kingdom, and that's why he wasn't with the 3 Hebrew boys when they went into the fire.
Oh, okay.
So he was higher up in like the
He got called up.
bad group,
He got promoted sooner.
like the mafia.
Yeah,
He was a capo.
he was a capel.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense now. So what happens?
Let's see here. So Shadrach, his name meant, once they changed it, obviously, to the Chaldeans, inspiration of the sun, which the Chaldeans worshipped. And Meshach, of the goddess of Shak, under which name Venus was worshipped. And Abednego, the servant of the shining fire,
Ooh,
which they worshipped also.
it's kind of a scary foresight.
Yeah, so they were all together, and they were just basically stolen away from their land as young. I mean, they were teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
and basically brought in to be over the king. I mean, he was using them in high places. They were so very intellectual.
So Daniel was obviously following the rules of this new king to get
Sure.
moved up.
They all were,
Right.
until it just got to the place to where, well, we got to draw a line here. Because before it even all started, as soon as they brought him in, the king tried to put him on a program of even a diet to make them eat certain things of the Chaldeans, and they didn't want that. They had their own customs, their Jewish customs, and they said, why don't you let us try this? Because he wanted to make them eat certain meats and stuff,
Mm,
and that was against their customs.
they were kosher. Right?
Yeah. So they basically asked him, why don't you let us do it our way
Mm-hmm.
and see if who comes out better? And actually, they let them basically be vegetarians while all the other kids ate the meats and stuff. And it actually turned out that they were stronger and better and more healthy at the end of the program. So, like, that king was smart, and he used whatever benefited him the most. And he was very, well, he was evil, so he was very manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he kidnapped these children, so if that says anything.
So when did things go wrong for Daniel? Did the Hebrew boys kind of spark something, or was it?
No. Obviously their cultures were not the same, and they were not at all in any way appreciating the God of, the 3 Hebrew boys and Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
So they were always conniving and conspiring to look for a way to get Daniel in trouble. And in this certain scenario, it was very strong in their faith, a prayer life.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel actually prayed 3 times a day to his God, the one true God,
Right.
the same God that delivered the Hebrew boys, which he was the same way. He had that strong faith and knew that whatever came about, he was going to follow his God
Mm-hmm.
above all. And so they conspired against him.
Wait, who's they?
All of the
bad group.
the leaders
Okay.
with the Chaldean kingdom and with Darius. Because it's weird, because this King Darius, he obviously didn't serve the same God,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe as we read and stuff, you'll see that he kind of likes Daniel. And he admires the fact of what Daniel does and how everything the Jewish people do, everything they touch would prosper. I mean, it's crazy, even in Exodus, when they were put into slavery by the Egyptians, it said in Exodus, the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and prospered.
Okay, so I have a question, and I don't know if you feel this way. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar
Mhm.
nailed
Good
it.
job.
That was
That's
awesome.
right. I know. So we
Do
know.
it again. Say it
yeah,
again.
Oh, that was so close. Nebuchadnezzar.
Good job.
Okay, I wanted to put an R in there for some reason. So he, I'm going to try to get this straight in my mind. He believed in the one true God after the three Hebrew boys. Okay.
I don't know if he particularly said, "Oh, this is my God, and I'm going to start worshiping him."
But he believed it. Well, so here's where I'm going with this. So Darius is the king
Right?
now.
Right.
So what happened to Nebuchadnezzar?
Well, it's just as time goes on and seasons change,
So new king. Okay.
Sometimes kings are killed. Sometimes.
So that's where this Darius comes in.
Right.
Okay. So he just kind of steps in and he's the king now, but he still has all the same crew.
Yes.
That was my confusion.
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of the same surroundings, same people, all
Okay.
that,
Okay. So Darius is just the new guy.
The new guy, new
Okay.
kid on the block.
Okay.
Hey, the new kids on the block, they're coming back out. ain't
I know,
they?
right?
Every boy band
In
is.
sync, yeah.
I'm here for
What
it.
was the other one?
Backstreet Boys?
There you go.
So we know the story, Daniel in the lion's den. Well, I don't really know the story. I just know he ended up in the lion's den.
Heck yeah.
How did we get there?
Well, basically, it once again, always comes back to the fact that there's only one true God to these Hebrew boys.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the true and living God of the forefathers of Christianity, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it always leads back to that. And there's always going to be a collision because that's their true leader. That's their true God.
Mm-hmm.
And any other king that worships anything else is never going to be down with that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, he prays and they don't like that.
Okay, so we know that Daniel was outwardly, I guess, kind of doing all the stuff that he's supposed to do for King Darius. How did he end up in the lion's den if he was doing the stuff he was supposed to do?
Basically, he outshined all of them.
Jealousy.
Yes, jealousy. Wow, jealousy. The Bible says where there's bitter envy and strife, there is confusion
Mm-hmm.
and every evil work. Now we know God is the author of peace, and so that only leaves the author of confusion. And we know who that is. But they were basically contending with him, and the king had already decided and made up his mind that Daniel was the smartest of all, was
Mhm.
the most gifted of all. So they were trying to take him down. And they were looking into all of his works for the kingdom, everything that he was doing, his production, and how he was doing the work, and they couldn't find a flaw. So they were looking for anything that they could do or even make up
Mm-hmm.
to take him down. They wanted him out. They were tired of living in his shadow.
Man.
I mean, that's current
yeah.
stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's, this is so simple. And you learn these things as a child, maybe not into this detail, but that's why these stories are so powerful. And I'm so glad that we're tapping back into them and bringing them out in a more detailed way, but even so, trying to still keep it simple. You do have this in every day. I mean, this is the difference in being a Christian and being a non-Christian, because anybody that's a Christian we know that Jesus, the golden rule says, do unto others as what?
You want it done unto you?
Yes. So when people, no matter what they believe or how they believe or what culture or what race they came from, when people prosper, you should be happy for that.
I'm blown away right now because I've heard like bits and pieces of the story. All I knew was Daniel went into the lion's den and he came out alive.
And that's mostly what
And
everybody knows.
So that's what I knew. And I'm like, God saved him. He was there. That's awesome. But this is so relatable in everyday life
Yes.
that we all deal with, our kids deal with.
All the way up to the highest degree.
That's crazy because this gives so much backstory as to why you continue to have faith and believe. That's amazing.
Yeah, in everything you can always go back to two things, good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
And it is running rapidly at the top of our country all the way down. This is happening everywhere. Jealousy. Why are you shining more than me? Why do you have more than me? Why am I sitting over here in poverty while you're feeding your pockets? All of this is like jealousy is
Ugly.
Yes, it's ugly. And
Ugly.
I think the terminology today, especially with the young people, is jelly.
Oh, why are you so jelly?
Yeah.
So we know, I'm getting back because I want to know what's happening. So we know that they are looking for things to get Daniel in trouble. So what do they do to finally make that happen?
Is that not like just so like now?
I'm going to go tattle on you.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't outperform him, so let's find something that he's doing wrong and
They're
get
gonna
him in
take him
trouble.
down.
So what do
great.
you do even from a child, when you wanted to take somebody down or you wanted to tell on them or tattle on them? What do you have to do in order to have something to tattle on?
Oh well, because Stephen, when we were little, I'm sure I have no doubt that I did something and totally blamed it on you.
Right. You got to set him up.
Yeah. Oh, you got to set them up or you got to watch them.
No doubt.
Oh, yep.
And so that means take all emphasis off of you and what you're doing, because if everybody in the world just went about their business and focused on my own life.
You know that meme? Worry about yourself.
Yes. Mind your business.
Worry about yourself.
If everybody would mind their own business and not be judging or trying to pay attention to everybody else and on top of their, business. That's why Jesus said, hey, why don't you remove the mote out of your own eye before you try to remove the splinter out of your brother's? You keep looking at your brother, you keep judging your brother. And God is basically saying, you don't even realize you got a lumber yard in your eye.
Yeah.
Stephen, how many times, and Cory, I know you do too, do we tell our kids, quit worrying about your sister. Worry about yourself, quit
100
telling me
times a
what
day.
they're doing.
100 times a day.
Yeah, so when you set out for evil, literally, when you let people don't even know they do this.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens because in our natural fleshy ways, that's opposite of everything of God, we don't want to help nobody. It's all about us.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody looks better, and especially in close quarters, like workplaces or, on the same ball team or, in the same college class or wherever, there are people. I was on the road for 10 years singing gospel music with my sisters, and you wouldn't believe some of the ways that different groups try to manipulate other groups to make
Sabotage.
yeah, like pull their cords, break their sound down, mess up something so
Wow.
they don't sound as good.
That's insane.
It's everywhere, all it boils down to. If you want the best for your brother or your sister, and you strive to make that happen, then that's where God will bless us. And every Hebrew from their childhood up, they knew that. It was never about, it's always about, my eyes are not even on me. My eyes are on God.
So how did they trap him? How did they get him in
So
trouble?
they started watching him. So they're already,
Sneaky stalkers.
spying him out. And what the heck are we going to do with this dude?
Mhm.
How can we get him out? He does everything right. He runs the kingdom and his position for, King Darius, like it's clockwork. He's automatic. How do we do away with him? So they start watching him. They start watching him, and he's praying. That's the one thing that doesn't have anything to do with Darius or his kingdom. And he's praying 3 times a day, as is his normal customs.
Mm-hmm.
So, bam. This doesn't do anything to prosper this kingdom or this king.
Boom.
So, we got you.
Okay, so that's what happens.
So they get up, rally up their
A
group,
posse?
and probably no telling how many others they pull in to get all on the same team, and they tell the king, and finally the king writes a decree. And I don't think, and as we start to read a little bit of this, I don't think he wants to do it, but it's like you're tying my hands up here, like they talk him into doing this decree before I believe he even realizes what Daniel, his best worker, is doing.
Okay, so we can relate that back to how many times have we caught our parents, Stephen, when they were doing something else and focusing, and we got them to agree to something that they didn't realize they were doing?
Oh, yeah.
Heck
That's,
yeah.
that's when you took them the paper to sign,
Yeah. Can you sign this? And our parents are super busy.
Yeah, that bad report card or that bad grade, you slide it in like, hey, you want to go ahead and take care of this real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I really need something. Well, what do you need? Well, I can't tell you that. If I tell you, then you won't let me.
Well, what I used to always do is I'd ask, I'd go up to him and I'd say, hey, mom. And the way she responded, I knew if I was going to ask it or not. If it was a, what? Never mind. You walk away. But if it was like, hey, yeah, what can I do for you, Stephen? That's when I hit her with it,
Yes.
She's in a good mood and
Yeah.
everything's going her way. And obviously you've been good to that point.
Yeah, you got to know. You got to know.
I've seen you just like, oh, I forgot nothing, and turn around and walk away.
Never mind.
Yeah. So they know what they're doing. They connive in the, conspire in the plan.
So let me read this. This kind of sets up everything.
Do it.
So the administrators.
Where are you reading at?
So this is Daniel 6, verse 6. So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, long live King Darius. Man, so they like prefaced him, like
I know.
built him up, pumped him up.
Oh, yeah.
Make you feel
You're
good.
the king of all kings.
We are all in agreement. We administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions.
That's
See?
specific.
Check that out, though. They're like, yeah, we're setting this up. And this is just building this king's
Oh,
ego.
man, yeah.
Because he's like, yeah, why would anybody be praying to anybody, but me or bowing down to me or doing, something that lifts me up. So that's the way it's got to be. And I don't want to paint this king like a softy either. I said I think he likes what Daniel does, but
He's got an ego, so he likes
heck,
himself
yeah.
better.
Yeah.
And these kings would especially back in that day, they would cut you up in pieces and go take a nap. I mean, it was nothing.
I know. Who comes up with these punishments that they're...
Cory, if you get that phone call, someone comes up to you and says, Cory, man, you're the best. You know what? You're just absolutely the best. And man, I couldn't have anyone do it better than you. You know something's coming.
Yeah,
It's a build up.
My head gets really big.
Yes.
At that point, I'm blind. Just keep going.
Well, we've got you in the room at this point, so we're good. But the thing is that even the Bible talks about having overly flattering words, because most people will do that. You said what you said, but they could also be doing it for this reason. If I build you up,
Mm-hmm.
then guess what you're going to do?
I'm going to build you up.
Yes. And that could be good if you're sincerely, you mean it from your heart. But in this case, no.
All right. So they got him all built up. They talked him into signing this thing.
Yeah.
So he signed the law. Where does it go?
And so he really doesn't know. He's like, yeah, we need this. But he doesn't know that it's going to shoot him in the foot, because his best man on the job, that's who they're out to get. And all the people that you named, all these leaders and all these advisors, think about that. Think about how much work they've done to manipulate, to conspire,
Oh,
and
yeah.
connive this plan before they even came to the king.
So I gasped a second ago. I was reading ahead. So they did this and set the law. And I wondered, in my head, I'm thinking, well, when the king finds out that Daniel is the one praying. So it says in Daniel 6:13, then they told the king, that man Daniel of the captives from Judah is ignoring you and your law. He still prays to his God 3 times a day. Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel.
Listen to
He
that.
spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. I wondered if the king would have mixed feelings about this, because he made this law, but he still loved Daniel as one of his favorites.
Yes.
What's going to happen when they come back? So what happened?
Yeah, so he already signed his signature to this decree. He was backed against the wall. They had his hands tied, and he didn't even know it. He didn't realize it. And now they've told him who's breaking the law, and that's my dude.
I know.
My best kid on the block.
It says, in the evening, the men went together to the king and said, Your Majesty, you know that according to the law of Medes, I almost said Medes,
Mayday.
and the Persians, no law that the king signed can be changed. Boy, that's backhanded.
Yeah.
They got him.
Yeah, and so his ego, man, he's fighting a war in himself now.
So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. And then the king said, so I'm going to read this last part and then you can tell us. The king said to him, May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you.
Whoa. What?
Mm-hmm.
You want to read that again?
Okay, so
Who said this?
So Darius, the king.
Listen to how crazy that this is how much that, it's one thing if he was just like, oh, there's no way. I mean, nobody can be praying to another anything. Everybody has to be, under my rule and under my authority. But this king, he really did have a soft spot for Daniel.
Obviously.
And Daniel really did lift him up. And Daniel knew that he wasn't God, but he wanted to do a good job for this king, and he was. And Darius admired that about him, and now they've all conspired. He signed his name, and he knows his back's against the wall, and he says, may the God that you serve rescue you. What's in the world? That's awesome.
So the king, they threw him in.
Yep.
I'm reading this. So I'm telling you the story now.
Come on.
So the king threw him in, and obviously the king was so conflicted about this that in Daniel 6:18, then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and couldn't sleep at all that night. So he was worried.
This is so crazy.
So he really liked that guy.
Yeah.
He really, really liked Daniel, and they had a good working relationship, and I think it was even, more and beyond the work relationship. I think they were friends.
Obviously. Well, because So he didn't sleep.
Yeah, so this
Daniel's
guy's
in the
anxious.
den.
This guy's anxious. He goes home. He's probably got anxiety eating him up because he knows that if something don't change, and he don't know the Hebrew God,
No.
he don't know the power of this God. He's afraid that he's going to go to bed, and the next morning Daniel's going to be devoured, and that's going to be the end of that.
Well, he got up early the next morning and hurried out to the lion's den.
He hurried.
When he got there, he called out in anguish, "Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve so faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions?"
This is amazing. He says, Daniel, was your God the living God? He acknowledges this God too the same way. Like he talks about, and I believe he realizes that this is such a powerful God, even though he's not, serving him. So it's obvious that they have a great connection.
There's quite the bond.
Yeah. But this next line right here, to me, is so powerful in this. It's a miracle.
Yeah.
What God does.
Well, Daniel answered, "Long live the king." But he says, "My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me. For I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty."
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, God sent his angel. What happened to the 3 Hebrew boys in the fire? It's the same thing. God sent his angel, and what did the angel do? He shut the lion's mouth.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Well, the king was so overjoyed. This is the cool part. So the king is so overjoyed that he had Daniel lifted out of the den. Not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his God. And the king gave orders for the men who had maliciously accused Daniel. He had them thrown in the lion's den.
Wow.
Yeah.
Along with their wives and children. Holy smokes.
What?
He's going to wipe out the whole crew.
That's never happening again.
And then the lions leaped on them. Oh, boy.
And what they do?
They tore him apart.
Hold on. I think I interrupted you. You said that they threw the men and their wives and children into the lion's den?
Yes.
Okay. I missed that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, he had them arrested and had them thrown into the lion's den because...
Holy smokes.
And their families.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that shows you, like, even though, he had respect for Daniel and Daniel had respect for him, he was able to drop the hammer. And these lions, you see what it just said. They leaped on them and tore them to pieces. Their body parts fell to the bottom of that lion's den. And I'm just saying, those same lions, those same vicious lions are the same ones that Daniel spent the night with, and they did not harm him, didn't even harm a hair on his head all night.
It sounds like King Darius has kind of had a little turnabout here because he sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel.
So this is just like Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
is the same.
he's seeing
all
these things.
all these kings, they got all this power, they got all this ego, but when you see miraculous, like the Bible says, when God moves, like all hands are faint.
So Darius sent this out to his people, for he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. And then it says Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So this went on to the next kind of group too. This was
Heck
powerful.
yeah.
Such a powerful story.
And that's the only reason all of it changes. All of it just changes over. The Bible talks about seasons change, kings are set up, kings are put down. So that's where it turns evil, it turns good. It turns evil, it turns good. You had Nebuchadnezzar, then you had Darius that somewhat had a friendship with Daniel.
But
and
then the next king, it just
you never
good
know.
stuff.
Yes. And so it's like this. You can compare this to today. You wonder how, and I can tell you this. We have an enemy after us. We have a power after us that's nipping at our heels. And the Bible said, be sober, be vigilant or alert, for your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, seeketh whom he may devour. So this enemy, he's on our heels and he's trying to devour you in every way, and in your mind and in your surroundings, and he can head up in different people in our lives. But it is always that God is in control. And if you call him Father, you got to know that no matter if it's a lion's den, no matter if it's a fiery furnace, he is able to deliver you. Go to him. Pray to him. Don't stop praying when it gets hot. Don't stop praying when they conspire against you. Don't stop praying when they try to take you down or take you out. Because that same God that you're praying to is able, just like he delivered the Hebrew boys from the fire. He delivered Daniel from the lion's den. And he's the same God today. He's the same God yesterday. He's the same God forever. And he is able to deliver you the same. Be blessed.